live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
All righty. Yay, yay, yay.
You didn't believe it was going to happen, did you?
I got real scared there 3 weeks ago. I got scared when I saw the money arrayed and all the establishment on Wagner's side, and then when Ravenstall started throwing all this crap at the wall. And I did not have sufficient faith in the voters of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, all 12
all
showed
10
up.
of them.
Yeah, right.
So, okay, what about that, by the way? So how many voters? There were, how many? 45,000, 46,000 voters.
Yeah.
What is that percentage-wise of registered? Do you have any idea?
I can't remember. I know countywide it was like 23% or something like that. It's probably a little higher in the city, but I don't know.
That's obscene.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't matter because the fact is the people who are engaged decide. That's fine and dandy. And there were a lot more engaged people who are on my side of the fence than the other, and I'm glad. Fine, great.
Yeah. That actually, I wrote about this online a little while ago. Just to sort of, I was kind of interested in how do we measure this enthusiasm gap or whatever. And so I just looked at the breakouts for Ward 14, which is your own neck of the woods there, the good liberals of the East End, versus Ward 19, which is in the heart of, that's Beachview essentially. That's the heart of Wagner territory.
Okay, what was
if you're going to say what the heart of, Peduto territory was going to be, it'd be Ward 14, and Ward 19 would be sort of the other.
And
the other
what
guys.
were the...
I mean, there's really almost no comparison. Turnout in Ward 14, the Peduto ward, was up from 2009, and for every vote that Wagner got in that district, Peduto got more than 4 votes.
Woo.
You go to Ward 19, and Wagner won.
Yeah.
But for every vote that Peduto got, Wagner only got about 1.5 votes.
Oh my gosh!
And turnout there was actually, and this to me was a surprising thing. Turnout there was, as on a percentage basis, about roughly the same. There were actually a couple hundred fewer votes cast than in 2009.
Well,
and what's
what
remarkable
do you make of that?
What I make of it is there was not a hell of a lot of enthusiasm for Jack Wagner's candidacy, even in his own area. And it kind of looking back on it, there's sort of anecdotal things that you kind of think, well, I don't know if this really means anything. But if I go through Beachview frequently for covering council races and things like that, and just being in the area, and I was surprised at the relative dearth of lawn signs in that area. There were obviously a lot more for Wagner than they were for Peduto, but I've seen races before where they were just plastered all over the place, and there just was not.
Do you
that
think
kind
it
of
was because he
enthusiasm.
got in so late and there just wasn't enough of a campaign structure around him? He might have had money, but he didn't have the structure.
I was at the Wagner event last night, which was not a great party. It's safe to say. I mean, I went there because I know that campaign and the people in it, and I liked them to a large extent. They had multiple kind of explanations for what happened. One was they felt, and maybe this is kind of convenient reasoning for them, that the negative ad that Peduto aired first was brutally effective, and they thought it was unfair. And Wagner said to reporters, I think the media could have done a better job of kind of assessing these claims or whatever. They also said a few other things. One is that Peduto obviously has been gearing up for this run for a very long time. An extensive network of other officials who his campaign team helped to get elected. It was in his corner this time, especially in the South Hills. And
like Rudiak.
Natalia Rudiak, who also won last night. I mean, that's the other thing. This isn't just about Peduto. This is about
his
Peduto
guy
and
won in the
his
14th. Gilman won.
Gilman won in the 8th. Rudiak, yeah. So it's a pretty big night for him. So they felt he had this infrastructure in place. Also, the fact that he got in there early. So many of the debates, so many of the candidates' nights were on Peduto's turf. Physically, they were very often in the East End, and then also like the sponsoring organizations were very often groups that Peduto has worked with in his capacity as a counselor for many years, and the sense that people gave was just sort of like we were in this weird position of Bill had a few months on us and was sort of able to shape the battlefield. But the interesting thing to me was, and several of them said this to me, that what they were up against was two things that their own candidate had to deal with. One is that Pittsburgh has just changed since the last time that Jack Wagner has run for a city office. It's changed demographically, and it's changed politically. There was a time when being a sort of conservative Democrat, your good old-fashioned kind of,
what I call
pro-labor,
a moderate
pro-life,
Republican,
pro-labor, pro-life Democrat was a ticket to ride in this town, and that is not
true
the case anymore. And Wagner never really adjusted to it. You saw this ad with his daughter, which was a cute ad. Saying my dad evolved on social issues, and then the Post-Gazette asks him a day or two later, what does that actually mean? And he doesn't want to answer the question
because he doesn't even know.
Because he doesn't want. Well, I think I think he just saw peril either way he answered it. So he just never figured that out. And the other thing they said, and in some ways I understand what this, especially where this is coming from, is they were stuck kind of between a rock and a hard place. There's one guy in this race who was the anti-Ravenstall, and that was Bill Peduto. So if you're Jack Wagner, how do you get in at this late? How do you define yourself? You can't define yourself as the anti-Ravenstall because that's Peduto, but you can't define yourself as the pro-Ravenstall because everybody is upset about that. So he ended up, and you can't denounce him too strongly because then you alienate the base that was.
Well, the reality is the Ravenstall people all went to Wagner, so he was tarred with Ravenstall whether he wanted to be or not.
And he did not.
Who he attracted.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That was a lot. Everybody who came to him was from Ravenstall.
You saw the firefighters very active in his campaign, and there's obviously fighting fires is a noble calling, and the people who do it are noble people. So, but he had to sort of walk this very fine line in terms of not being the Ravenstall guy, but then also not striking out too harshly against Ravenstall as a way of distancing himself.
Okay, so enough of parroting the losers' excuses.
I actually would say that to some extent there's a shared narrative about what happened with this race. It wasn't just
the more there were more negative ads aimed at Bill Peduto than at Jack Wagner. And Wagner's complaint is that somehow Peduto's was eviscerating, somehow stuck, while all of the other vicious ones have been. That's bull.
I mean, everybody...
And what did media not do for Wagner that he wanted done? Wagner also complaining that you mean 20,000, you get a few 20,000 votes and you become the mayor? Well, yeah, and it's called getting your vote out. He sounded really not particularly gracious last night, I thought.
Yeah.
He was full of excuses. And and I was a little surprised at that.
What he said about the media is essentially, this ad accused me of cutting funding for Meals on Wheels. And
no,
the
it
Peduto,
didn't.
The
it
Peduto
said
ad
that kind of cut would, of course, affect programs like.
I will
Meals
say,
on
I will
Wheels.
say that people, and this isn't just me saying, people who have looked at that ad and put its claims into context felt like on a couple of the points that ad made, Bill was playing a little fast and loose within the bounds of what goes for what passes as political discourse in our illustrious republic. Yes, but the kind of thing a candidate would be justly upset
And what
about ads
coming at Peduto? Were those kosher?
No, I don't think so. But here's the thing. I mean, honestly,
and why did they offend the public so much more? Apparently, according to Wagner.
That's actually, this is sort of an interesting thing. Candidates, again, there's a kind of a shared narrative between both camps on how this race played out, and there's a feeling on both sides that those Ravenstall ads really actually ended up hurting Wagner rather than Peduto.
So Ravenstall incompetent up
right to the last.
Right to the last.
Yeah.
Were those ads done by Brabender?
I don't know that that's been proven for a fact.
Well,
I mean, the
why
Post
is it
Gazette
a secret?
They just don't do it. What we know is the ad company is the company who actually placed the ads, and that's a Republican outfit. We were the first to report that. It's the Post Gazette who's kind of speculated that the people who actually produced the ad was Brabender Cox. It does.
Brabender Cox, by the way, is the go-to guy for really conservative candidates such as
maybe not after this.
Rick Santorum.
Maybe not after this.
If it's Brabender's ad, he might have heard himself.
I think this ad just when you watch it, I felt like I was back in 1997. You know what I mean? Like, it was a very strange kind of spot. You think how much has changed, and
hello, it's a Republican.
Maybe right. Maybe that's it. Maybe being stuck 20 years in the past is their MO or whatever.
It's the 21st century, John. Okay, so it's tough when you're a publication as you are. Well, not you are, but
as I work for. Yeah.
And your paper comes out on a weekly basis and comes out on Wednesday mornings, and the election is Tuesday night, but your paper's already has to be in the print, right?
Are you about to ask me about our cover?
I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to show everybody who hasn't seen it. So the cover of today's city paper says this, has a smiling picture of one of the candidates on the cover, and the headline is Mayor-elect A.J. Richardson. Now, this is the fourth this guy, did he even get 1,000 votes?
No, he got about 200 votes.
He had 200 votes, but the best face tattoo of the lot, without a doubt, and the best smile. Absolutely the best looking guy, most charming. He's even better looking than all the rest of them with his tattoo.
Yeah.
He's a good looking guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jess agrees with me.
Okay.
See?
All right.
What
Awesome.
do you guys know? What do you know? Yeah. Okay, so it says here, Mayor-elect A.J. Richardson, and this little teeny print says exit polling conducted by Karl Rove and Rasmussen reports. I have to tell you this funny thing. A friend of mine who was over last night said she got a phone call from a polling data place,
right,
who identified themselves as with the Tribune Review.
Yeah, Susquehanna, it would have been.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And she was asked, and she says, I don't know if I got the names right, but how I felt about Abdul Jamar Richardson. And she thought, Abdul Jamar Richardson. And then she realized it was A.J. Richardson.
Right.
And you wonder how polls get skewed? What the hell was that?
Yeah.
No one knows him as Abdul, whatever, if that is a name. A.J. Richardson. So they didn't say, and how do you feel about William, whatever, Peduto, or Jacob Wheatley? What the hell? So you knew about that?
I knew that was his name, and I know that they've. I don't know whether like that. I've seen it. I've only ever seen it used in the Trib, and I don't know whether that informs what the House.
Listen, it's exactly like saying Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah. It's white guys who cannot handle black men with Muslim names.
Right.
God,
Yeah.
Jesus, how weird. Anyway.
I'd also just say for the record, Mr. Richardson was a great sport about that. I mean, we told him exactly what we were doing.
He loved the idea, I'm sure.
Well, actually, he didn't. I think he was a little sensitive to. He wanted to. He also sort of wanted to be treated, respectfully as a candidate or whatever. And what we said is like, if anybody's being made fun of here, it's us. And the situation that we're in, because as you point out, I mean, essentially the paper goes to, like, literally physically goes off to the printer, like, in the early afternoon.
So there's no way the day after that you can have coverage.
Exactly. So we just thought this is like a Dewey defeats Truman moment that we may as well just sort of own the situation and do it on purpose.
And you felt pretty certain that he wasn't going to.
But you know what? If we'd been right, it would have been the biggest coup of my journalistic career. Just because it's funny to me. I mean, the closest we got to this before was when it was last year in the presidential primary. You may recall that Rick Santorum dropped out just a few weeks before the primary was held here in Pennsylvania.
Oh, right. Exactly.
That was also on a Tuesday, and it was the Tuesday our election guide went out, and our cover image was Rick Santorum, this sort of zombie thing crawling out, and it's like 10 o'clock or 10 or 11 in the morning, and all of a sudden my Twitter feed is like, sources say Santorum about to drop out, and I was like, you mother, even when you drop out of this thing, you find a way to screw me up. So we basically had to go and, like, I had to come up with some headline language that somehow made sense of that image, even though the entire story had flipped itself around. We had to pay an extra plating fee or whatever. These are the perils of being in a.
I can't imagine. What a pain in the neck.
Yeah, so this way we felt certain that nothing was going to happen last night that was going to make us change our cover.
Okay, well, speaking of Susquehanna.
Yes.
Polling that the Tribune Review used. They're the ones who finally gave me some breathing room when they put out in their Sunday paper their poll that showed Peduto way up beyond the margin of error.
Yeah.
And I started to breathe a little bit easier. However, the reality is he polled. He's up against three other people, and didn't he get more votes than the other three combined?
Yeah, I think 51%. Yeah.
That's pretty...
Yeah, I think...
That's an impressive win, is it not, in a four-person field?
Yeah, no, there's no question that breaking 50% there. I don't know that anybody expected that. I mean, up until last night, I mean, what people say to a reporter at a campaign event, who knows what you're really getting, but there was this thing like, geez, he just can't seem to break that 40% barrier, and there's still 18%.
That's right.
There's still 18% undecided out there, which is absolutely true. I mean, I guess a lot of those people just said to hell with it and decided not to decide.
Okay. The big thing is, you say the Wagner camp, and I guess Peduto agrees too, and everybody else seems to, that Pittsburgh ain't the same place Pittsburgh has been historically. And we're talking for a long, forever time. That this town politically, just as its skyline has changed and it's gone from an industrial town to an eds and meds town, that Pittsburgh is becoming a different place. Mm-hmm. And that place is politically not what it was. And the old guard is going to get run over, just as they did last night, by what? More progressive. It's going to be a more progressive city, we think.
We hope.
A younger city and a more progressive city.
Yeah.
Well, part of that would be that if eds and meds are what your base is, that attracts a more highly educated and consequently more progressive population.
Yes, and we should also just bear in mind that especially on some of the LGBT issues. I mean, there's obviously some broader national trends that are part and parcel of what's happening here as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that to me was sort of the most. I mean, Peduto has been saying that for a very long time. Right. But you just kind of think, yeah, of course.
Yeah, those are the people you talk to.
And those are the people who read my paper. Those are the people I hear from. But when I'm there at Wagner HQ last night, and some of the people in Wagner's camp are kind of like, yeah, this is something we just never really, figured out how to deal with. You kind of think, well, shit.
I waited 30 years to see this. I am so glad Pittsburgh's waking up. How did he do? You haven't seen a demographic breakdown, because the Susquehanna poll showed him pulling even with voters in Pittsburgh,
older.
65 and older, which you would expect to be his base.
Yeah.
He really just... Okay, so either Wagner screwed up totally, or the people who vote in Pittsburgh are different than the people who voted in Pittsburgh just 4 years ago. Or
although I think
what's going on, really?
I think a couple things. I think one is, obviously, Wagner had a tough race to run. I don't know that, I think if you talk to his campaign now, they would say there are definitely some things they would have done differently. He was up against it because he got in late. That's definitely a factor. But, something else I just say, we talked about this a little last week. Again, in my lifetime, there have been occasions where the electorate of Pittsburgh, hidebound though it may have been in many people's minds, did break with that, establishment machine candidate, Pete Flaherty being the first
It's a little rebellion that the voters stage every once in a while and stick a finger in the eye of our overlords.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of sort of defiance of it or whatever.
Right.
And too, I mean, I think Jack is a guy in his 60s. He's a very presentable candidate. I don't think he's a dummy.
No.
The way some Peduto people do.
He's a good guy.
He's
Right. I agree.
He looks like a damn mayor for sure.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He looks right.
So, but I think there just might have been kind of a feeling like we just don't want to necessarily put the ball back into this team's hands again, just quite yet,
No.
With all the stuff that was going on with Ravenstall and everything else, and I think that was probably part of what was going on there.
Okay, so when we come back, we want to talk more about what is a new mayor who had the entire establishment of the city, and I'm talking about corporate, governmental, media, institutional, almost everything you can name. The power of this city was arrayed against Bill Peduto, and look what he did. So what does this mean in terms of how he as a mayor is going to have to function with these people who did not want him in this job? We're going to get into that after this.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for a look at how the sequester is harming local social service programs. Plus, Pyrofest, Marina and the Diamonds, Muckfest, and Joe Aiello. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania. And on the web at pghcitypaper.com. And on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a pep talk that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You can improve your future. Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up. Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and for free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education, brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to paddle to the point? Paddle Without Pollution, Pittsburgh's nonprofit watershed stewardship and education organization, will hold its third annual cleanup of Pittsburgh's 3 rivers on Saturday, June 8th. Dozens of kayakers and canoeists will launch from 3 points, one each on the Allegheny, Ohio, and Monongahela rivers, and paddle toward Point State Park, picking up trash as they go. After the cleanup, volunteers will enjoy food, entertainment, and prizes at the park. Join Paddle Without Pollution on June 8th to help protect our rivers, have some fun, and be a part of this special event. To register, visit www.paddlewithoutpollution.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
If you're not into Pittsburgh mayoral politics, you ain't going to be into this show. I'm just telling you that right now.
We should have said that at the front.
Right, and I rarely get real into nitty gritty politics, but I have to admit, after the fact, doing postmortems on election like this, I find very interesting to get a sense of the city I love and the city I'm living in. I was sort of wondering if a lot of the people who voted for who wanted Jack Wagner, who maybe gave money to his campaign, they don't live in Pittsburgh. Don't you think that's really true? They live in the burbs a lot.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, that is a factor. You know, I was talking to Jim Furla, the state senator, who has been very much in Wagner's corner. You know, that's one of the things he said. Is he said, you look at some of the endorsements that Jack got, the FOP. Look, a lot of cops are registered Republicans. They're not voting in this primary. Building trades. Well, those building trade guys live out in the suburbs too. So you get a lot of money. I mean, from these unions, you get some grassroots support. Definitely from the firefighters, who were very strong for Wagner yesterday. I mean, there's practically like a battalion of them at his event last night. I think there was a lot more beer left over at the end of the evening if it weren't for the firefighters.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. At any rate, so yeah, I mean, I think that was part of the issue for him. He was sort of working from a coalition that, again, 20, 30 years ago
would have been
had enough to, maybe not indomitable, but certainly in a race like this with a low turnout, might have been able to pull it together for him. But it didn't happen.
Okay. Now, all right. So Peduto's elected. And, well, he's not. There is a general election.
Yeah. Josh Wander is.
Josh Wander, I assure you, will not be the next mayor of Pittsburgh, nor would we want him to be. He's a little wacko.
I suggested to him earlier today that he might look for capitalizing on the facial tattoo vote.
Get a tattoo.
As somebody else on Twitter pointed out, there are at least 200 of those votes now in play for November. Apparently his religion forbids it. Tattoos.
That is true. You can't be. He's Jewish, and you can't have tattoos if you're a Jew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really a missed opportunity for him.
Oh, he's nuts. I'm sorry. I mean, I shouldn't say nuts, but he's one of these. What do you call them? Preppers.
Yeah.
He's been featured on that cable show.
Yeah.
He's the
Jewish prepper. No, I think that's what people have called him. Yeah. I mean.
You know, he thinks the end is coming, and he needs guns. And
I'll say this for him. I mean, the guy went out and tried for the Allegheny County labor endorsement, to which I say, God bless him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's not an easy room to walk into as a Republican, and yet he did it. So I respect that, and I'll say this too for Wagner. You know, so many of these, as we said before, so many of these debates were on Peduto's turf, and yet he went to almost every one of them. You know,
I think all the candidates really did They ran. They did they did it. It's not easy to do. It really isn't. Not easy.
Yeah. I'll never do it.
Oh God, I can't even imagine. Covering it's bad enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the council. Peduto as we aren't sure, but who the pro-Peduto people on council, who we can maybe assume will be elected in the general, are
Natalia Rudiak in District 4, which is Wagner's territory.
Okay.
And Dan Gilman, who is Peduto's current aide, I should say.
And who got his seat on council. And
who won his seat that Peduto will be vacating at the end of the year.
Also, Dowd Dowd will give him trouble, but I'm saying no. I'm saying who's on the council.
Yeah.
So Dowd will endorse him, but
Dowd did endorse him.
But Dowd is not ever a surefire.
Dowd and Peduto have had a spirited set of disagreements in the past.
Okay,
you have to put Bruce Krause.
Bruce Krause from the South Side
is obviously an ally, and so here you get into the question.
Wait a minute. The council is how many people?
9 people. So,
okay, we're up to 4.
Right. So here are the other ones. Council District 1 is Darlene Harris, and she's of course.
Oh my God! She can't stand.
Council District 2 is Teresa Kale-Smith, who also won her re-election last night in an uncontested.
And she's a
primary.
Ravenstall.
She has been part of that faction.
Okay.
The next one would be 5, which is Corey O'Connor. Son of Bob O'Connor. Sort of a wild card.
With Peduto.
Sort of a wild card. Well, I don't know.
What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing: is a mayor gets into office, and this is a strong mayor system of government, and it'll be very interesting to see how Peduto being elected will change the dynamic there. You find out a lot about this stuff. We really won't know until next January when there's the vote for the council presidency. And that's when you start to see how things are going to shake out.
Okay, but Corey O'Connor, as you see it now, looks like he might be the one who could it's going to be 5-4 one way or the other.
You might see. Yeah, you never can tell. You might see again. You might see, Teresa Cale Smith also. I mean, I'm not speaking
going
for her.
to where she sees the power.
Because you got to represent your district. And do you best represent your district by
fighting with the mayor?
By fighting with the mayor or whatever? I mean, arguably, this came up as an issue in the District 4 race where Natalia Rudiak, essentially her challenger's critique of her was, you're too close to Peduto and not close enough to the mayor, and that's hurting our district. Obviously, the voters didn't see it that way because, there has been development in that district, and people seem to think it's not broke, why fix it? But that's the kind of calculation that that councilors make.
Okay.
These are the kinds of things they have to think about.
Other than Wagner, who are the big losers yesterday? I mean, just in terms of their positioning and where they find themselves now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing, you kind of have to say the Allegheny County Democratic Committee. I mean, they didn't have
Okay, who'd they endorse? All the losers?
The only city candidate they endorsed who won was Dan Gilman, who didn't need their support, essentially.
Okay, so they're a non-entity, not a factor. Also, let us look at the wonderful endorsements of, again, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, both telling the voters that you must elect Jack Wagner, and the voters saying to both newspapers, hell with you.
I think I think the FOP and the firefighters are going to have to do a little bit of soul searching about how they want to go on ahead. Mike Laporte, the president of the FOP, had some harsh words.
Some petulant. The head of the FOP is quoted in the paper as saying, I might retire. I mean, he just wants to throw it in and quit because his guy didn't.
Because he said Peduto treats city workers like garbage, which I thought was sort of Peduto was endorsed by the paramedics union, which is sort of the odd man out in public safety very often. But I mean, there are certainly people who.
Well, you got to figure if Wagner had gotten in, things would have stayed mostly the same. Wagner, I thought one of the most stupid things he said and positions he took was he said that he thought the next police chief should come from inside the department. I don't think anyone in their right mind would suggest that. But it shows that he was willing to let the same screwed up, troubled system stay in place. And if you're a public employee, you like that because you know the system, you know how it works, everything.
Yeah, some do, some don't.
But most of the public employees
certainly the union leadership.
Peduto.
Certainly the union leadership at the FOP preferred that position. And to me that was one of the challenges, I'll just say, covering this whole campaign was you go to all these candidates nights and debates and forums, and the longer these guys talk, the harder it is to tell the difference between them. They just sounded so much alike, to a large extent. That issue.
Peduto was out.
I know, but what I'm saying,
on every issue.
Right.
Wagner was
right, but
echoing.
He was doing it, and he was doing it quite skillfully in the sense that after an hour or two of sitting in that room, listening to the guys up on the stage talk to each other, you were just kind of like, what the hell? I mean, you would see articles in the Post-Gazette or whatever saying there's not a difference of substance, it's a difference of style or whatever.
Well, the cop thing is a difference.
And that's what I was about to say, is that to me was sort of one of those acid tests. The one thing, it was a very clear distinction, and I think it sort of speaks to a cultural divide as well. Is this Pittsburgh that believes that Pittsburgh has the solution to Pittsburgh problems? That there's something so idiosyncratic and unique about us that only we can discuss?
Oh, yes.
That we have the solution to our issues?
You can't bring somebody in from outside.
Or do we sort of put ourselves up? And, Peduto's position, I think, and it's just my personal opinion, is I think Peduto's position was the right one, which is, what? The best candidate may be within the city.
Yeah, but we're
going to cast the national net, and whoever we've got in-house, if they're the guy, they should be able to stand up, and look good in comparison to the best that we can find all across the country. That's the standard I want to set, and that, I think, makes a lot of sense.
I mean, the other standard is, frankly, provincial, which is we're hoping the Pittsburgh we're leaving behind. Okay, other big losers. Big loser, back to the council. Big loser.
Yeah, Ricky Burgess. Ricky Burgess has got some problems.
The Reverend Burgess, who represents Homewood, and
and has long been a thorn in Peduto's side, and I guess vice versa as well. I mean, one of the things I think was sort of interesting was the extent to which the attacks made on Peduto, both by the Ravenstall campaign, by Ravenstall in his little private venture, and by the Wagner campaign. So many of those attacks seem to just be coming from, you know, the desk of Ricky Burgess. So many of the things in the ads, so many of the things that Wagner would say in debates were just things that Burgess had been using as a cudgel against Peduto over the course of the past several years.
So Burgess was very much a part of the Wagner campaign and positioning on.
Yeah, I can't speak to what discussions took place. I can just tell you that it can't possibly be a coincidence. And of course, Burgess was there last night at Wagner's event. As were aides and people allied with him. So, yeah, and you know, here's the thing. I've reported this online, although not in print. One of the interesting things about this race is, in the latter days, the last couple weeks before the primary, this brand spanking new committee got launched. This public committee, this political committee called African Americans for Good Government. Right. And African Americans for Good Government did not exist in any form in April, as far as I know. Certainly not in March. This is a new committee, and they were active in this campaign, door knocking and phone banking for Peduto. But what I'm given to understand is that this is actually sort of a leadership pack for Ed Gainey, a state representative who represents much of the area that's in Burgess's district. And he and Peduto are very close allies. I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that between that and some other things, Ricky Burgess may need to watch his back between now and 2015 when he's up for election. I think there's a sense, you know, not that I've gotten directly from Peduto, but from people in his circle that there's some payback coming his way. So yeah, I mean that will be an interesting thing to watch.
Wow. So do you think Burgess will run for council president?
I have no idea what will happen.
How that's going to.
The thing about look, I've covered these a few times, and it's just like,
you can't figure.
You can't. I mean, we're talking 6 months, 7 months. You can't tell 7 hours before the vote happens what's going to happen. I mean, really, that's literally the case.
Anybody heard from a certain fellow currently holding the corner office over there on Grand Street, a guy named Luke Ravenstall? Has he been heard from
I
today?
haven't gone to his Facebook page today. Somebody told me last night that he had just been silent or whatever. So
well, he's got to show up for work today. Is anybody? That's the funniest thing I said.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So we're essentially without a mayor for how long now? 7 months?
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's there for 7 months, barring abdication or indictment.
He's not necessarily there.
Yeah.
He doesn't even show half the time. Yeah. Okay, and so if he's indicted, who's council president?
Darlene Harris.
If he's indicted, the lovely Darlene Harris will take over.
Step up in an interim, yeah.
Or that'll be fun.
Or, you know, I mean, here's the thing: as I understand the provisions, and I'm a little sleep deprived, so I may be getting this wrong, but Ms. Harris, if she chose, could say, "No, I will forego this honor."
Let Mr. Peduto
and then council.
Early.
Well, council as a whole would choose who the mayor would be, and in fact, they're under no obligation to choose any elected official. They could choose you. They can choose any resident of the city of Pittsburgh. I think that would be awesome. I'll put your name in if you like. If it comes to
I
that.
got a write-in vote for judge yesterday.
Did you really?
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Huh. Good for you.
Thank you.
By the way, we should just note that at least last I heard, I haven't checked this morning, but one of the nice little gets for progressive voters is that Eleanor Bush.
But she came in fourth, and
that's all you need. That's all you need. Top four.
Yeah, top four, but she didn't make it in the Republican.
Yeah. Well, but if she's on the Democratic side, you got to figure her odds are.
She is supposed to be you never hear anything but raves about this woman, Esther Bush, especially with Eleanor.
Yeah, Esther Bush is the.
Oh, right. Eleanor Bush.
League.
In regard to the, especially with children, and she's just amazing and wants to serve, and as a judge overseeing children's cases and issues, but.
The only
Did you see
non-endorsed.
the other woman who won?
Jen Satler.
Is Jen Satler. And, I don't know if the Bar Association's recommendations mean anything.
They don't.
They don't really.
No, I was just saying they don't mean anything in terms of determining a winner.
Something to me.
Right,
I mean, I look at them because those are lawyers who know these people. Yeah. And even if there's certain political stuff going on, if they say somebody is literally not...
I think she was ranked not recommended at this time.
Which is the second to the lowest.
Right, the lowest is unqualified.
Unqualified. And, that means something to me. I don't know. And she did very well, probably because of her commercials.
Yeah.
I'm the wife of a cop.
Yeah, who got shot.
Who got shot. That's
but
it.
Now
so
he's
let's
fine.
Have her be a judge.
Right, yeah.
Jeez, what is...
Yeah, whereas I know, there's a guy, Mark Daffner, who's run a few times for judge and never seems to get a break. I'm sure he's probably thinking he'd like to go out and shoot a family member just to...
so he could be a victim.
I'll say this. I mean, the Jen Satler thing is... I went to a lot of the sort of committee things. So here's what it is. She was an endorsed Democrat.
Oh,
and what do we see? Eleanor Bush was the only judicial candidate in the top 4 who was not an endorsed Democrat. Okay. Jen Satler was an endorsed Democrat. And I watched how she went about getting the process of that endorsement. And she would go to all these committee night meetings, meet the candidates. And these are for the committee elders in the party who'd make the decision about who to endorse. She was the only candidate with a name plate. I don't mean a name tag. I mean, she had like an embossed, brass thing on her thing. Jennifer Satler. She had done this before. And she gets up there. And this is how you get an endorsement. She would say, I hope, this would be in February or March, I hope you all got my New Year's greeting card and my Valentine's Day letter. And I hope you will all come to join me for my complimentary breakfast the day before the Democratic Party endorsement. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh, and by the way, my husband was shot. But he's fine now. I'm not even doing
my cute baby while you're at it.
And she has these commercials. Did you see her TV commercial?
Yeah.
At the end, she puts on the glasses. So, there's going to be some judging.
Oh, yeah.
She put on her judging spectacles. I mean, the whole, and I'm, in a way it's unfair to single her out, except that she was not recommended by the Bar Association. And because, the only reason I'm singling her out is because she was so effective at it. But this is the game. And you kind of look at it and you just think, this is absolutely, and I'm a Jacksonian Democrat. I believe in the power of the people at the ballot box. But there's something deeply messed up with how we go about this business of picking judges. It is.
So in other words, so these people who make the endorsement can be bought for scrambled eggs and some bacon.
I don't think you could say that they're being bought. I think it's one of these things where there's sort of it's about relationships and are you comfortable with the person? Do you feel they could do? I mean, because let me tell you something. One thing that does not happen, no matter who the candidate is that's up there, and no matter which ward or committee you're sitting in, one thing that does not happen is a full and forthright discussion of people's judicial philosophy. Nobody's up there talking about like the Wickert decision, or discovery rules.
No, they're all trying to look tougher than the next one, and I don't know. It's pathetic. All right, so Satler, don't vote for her in the general, okay? Bush, vote for quality, for God's sakes. There's nothing political about this. It's about quality. Jeez, educate yourselves. My God. Here's another winner last night.
Yeah.
Rich Fitzgerald. County executive,
surely.
big time.
Yes.
Okay, so now you've got a county exec and you've got a mayor-to-be, and they work together. That can only bode well, can it not? And they're both sort of on the same page. Peduto's more progressive than Fitzgerald, wouldn't you say?
I don't know. I guess it depends on how you define
who the
progressive.
hell knows?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think? You sort of winced when I said
No, I mean, I just, I think this is, there's this kind of...
You could say that for Honorado and Ravenstall. Did that work well or not when you had...
I mean, I think there are times when it clearly did not work particularly well. I mean, I think there were places where, they would sort of link arms in a way that made it difficult to get things done. campaign finance rules would be sort of a good example of a case where, the county, simply didn't enact its own ordinance, and as a result, it's really problematic trying to enforce the city's ordinance. So it's just there's been some trouble there, and I think the thing about Rich is, and the concern people have, and this is maybe the only part of that Post-Gazette editorial that made any sense, is the guy arguably engaged in some pretty serious overreach when it came to the independence of the people he appoints to boards and commissions. Yep. And so it's a little natural to wonder, is Peduto going to be a vassal or whatever? Now, my personal answer is not likely to happen because
no, if you know him,
because he and Fitz are just both, they'll just
strong. They're both strong.
Yeah, I think if anything is likely, they'll both have a big falling out. That seems just as likely an option. But yeah, I think that would be certainly Peduto's argument in the campaign was, having your two top officials in southwestern Pennsylvania on the same page, not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. So all that is good. Let's take a break.
All right.
And we'll do some mopping up and, okay. I don't know, maybe get into... I just wanted to let you know that Chris Potter, whose brain we've been picking all morning, is operating on 2 hours of sleep. And you're extraordinarily articulate. You're just going to crash and burn after the show you have to go to after this.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I'll be on Central Pittsburgh at noon.
He'll be back over at that.
Pouring myself out.
Do you walk over there?
I take the bus usually.
Oh,
it's not far. It just takes time.
If you walked across the Smithfield Bridge.
Yeah, and then you just walk up Carson or one of the back streets.
But that is yeah.
It's it's probably like half an hour.
But you're too tired today.
What are you challenging my manhood here? Yeah, no, you know what? By God, I am gonna walk it. I'll show you, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, you just go walk across the river.
I gotta worry about the sun on the top of your head. It's a bad news. Thank you.
You're walking. We're taking a break.
Okay, all right.
We're taking a break.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Final week, 60% off vouchers for City Theater's Abigail. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. Bergbargains.com.
It's warming up outside, so get to Little's for all your spring needs. Little's has everything for men, women, and children to stay in style for this upcoming hot summer. Lots of great colors from Dansko, New Balance, Steve Madden, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Did somebody say more? Okay, I'm going to buy you one.
It's all right. I'm fine.
Can we take up should I get on Kickstarter?
Let's do it.
We need some equipment.
It's all right. It's good. I feel great.
Okay, everything's good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else via the election that we need to talk about. Any sort of points in your head that need to be addressed?
In my pointy head.
Nah, I think we pretty much covered
stuff.
Yeah,
it'll be...
Okay, we got a
call. Hey, all right.
All right. Hey, caller, hi.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Good morning, guys. This is Jason Cullen from the East End.
Okay.
And I too had some concerns with the election, but I'm happy that Bill Peduto won. But I was actually worried when one of my friends showed me the video of the... after I realized he won, I was concerned about the next election until one of my friends showed me the video of Peppers with the Josh Wagner guy. And he is absolutely, like you said, Lynn, nuttier than bullshit. and I think it would save Bill a lot of money if he had a public screening of that show. And that could be all he needs for his campaign, because it would be devastating for the city if that guy somehow becomes mayor.
Well, it ain't going to happen. And you don't even need the public screening because...
I'd actually really like to see it. I have not seen it.
No, is it on YouTube? How did you... Where is it?
It's on Hulu.
Hulu. Yeah, okay.
You can look at the entire episode, and they show this guy running through Shinley Park with a group of other people, with his full military gear, automatic weapons. It's absolutely absurd. It's really absurd. And so I was worried. I said, "Oh, we're gonna have a Republican," and I realized it was this guy. And my friend said, "No, I want you to see something." He pulled it up. Like, I slept well.
That's right. I was going to say you can go back to sleep. Nah. Thank God. Hey, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Check it out. Hulu.
Yeah, Hulu. Yeah, this is the same reason I'll never run for office, because you wouldn't even have to do any opposition research. I mean, you just plug my name into my own website, and I'm doomed. That's it. You wouldn't even have to quote me out of context.
No, me either. We would make it.
Does Chris Potter really believe? Well, kind of. And a once promising career is nipped in the bud.
God. So, yeah, I think we did it, right?
All right, yeah.
And so now we have to wait, though, until the November election to make it official, and then January we'll get a new start. Does the way it work, does the old mayor attend? Is there some kind of like a
passing of the torch or something?
Yeah, like they do.
Gosh, I can't remember. I don't think so. I mean, I think you're just sworn in by a judge, and, and I think that's it. I don't think...
Well, Peduto, there's a lot of people who've been wanting him to have a shot for a long time, and it'll be interesting to see if he now handles the governance.
This is the...
it's not a sure thing that, you move from being the gadfly to being the guy in charge. So,
and one of the things, I have to say, if I have any... One of the things I'll be watching very closely is to sort of see whether history repeats itself. I can recall when Tom Murphy was elected in 1993, beating Jack Wagner, actually. He came in as a sort of young, brash reformer.
Right.
Big believer in, neighborhood empowerment in terms of community decisions and all that stuff. And after a couple of terms, he was ramming it down people's throats as much as any cigar chopping ward boss. I think that's the nature of being a mayor. It's different. It is different. And
as you said, why is it a strong mayoral form of government? You can have mayors who don't have a lot of power, but our system gives the mayor a lot of power.
Yeah. You just in a sort of operational way, he runs the law department. So if council wants a legal opinion, they have to go to a guy who's working for the mayor, and darned if that opinion doesn't always come out in the mayor's interests or whatever. He has the appointment power to, the URA and others, very significant authorities.
So we can expect, in regard to the authorities, then, a wholesale sort of changing of the guard?
You have just brought up something that is of interest to me. Peduto has told us, and he's not the first politician by any means to say this, that he intends, once he becomes mayor, to ask for the resignations of everybody who currently serves on
these. Well, that sounds like Fitzgerald and everybody else.
Well, except he's able to ask it. I was talking to Jim Furlow last night, and I said, "What about?" And he said, Furlow said, I've got 2 years left on my term. I can't remember if that was the exact thing, because he's on the URA board.
Right.
He's on the URA board. He's like, I, of course, respect Mr. Peduto's right as mayor to ask for this, to the victors go to the spoils. And I said, does that mean you'd resign? He said, absolutely not. And I'll say this. One of the things he cautioned is, he's not the only state elected official who sits on a board. You look at like a Dan Deasy who sits on Water and Sewer Authority. I think Adam Ravenstall, the mayor's brother, also sits on authority. You need friends in Harrisburg. No matter who you are, no matter what you want to do. Do you necessarily want to go right out of the gate?
Okay, that's just one position on a board.
Right.
So what about, a lot of people are going to go.
Yeah, people may go. Yeah. But they're not obliged to. I don't believe. So we'll see what happens. But it'll be very interesting to see. And Peduto's position, as you kind of alluded to, is essentially, a new broom has to sweep clean.
That's right.
We got to get rid of the detritus of this administration that has done such, damage to the city, this prospect. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, interesting stuff. Jake Wheatley didn't hurt himself, did he? Don't you think he got his... I didn't have any sense of who Jake Wheatley was, and I think more people know him now, and I thought he was well spoken and handled himself well, or not.
I mean, I think, there's this sort of concern. Was Wheatley in this race as some sort of triangulation strategy to sort of peel away some black votes from Peduto? Obviously, that didn't amount to much. I think what Wheatley certainly did very consistently throughout the campaign is sort of raise these issues of class and of poverty that probably wouldn't have even gotten an airing. Now, I don't know that I necessarily felt like the Wheatley campaign gave us a plan and a program for eradicating poverty.
But he was a voice for
but he was certainly
marginalized.
He was, yes, very much
demographic.
So. Very much so. And I think I think it's to the credit to his credit and to the benefit of the voters that stuff was out there a little bit, because it's real easy to get locked into this thing of, should we be given, $100 million in TIF money to, in subsidies to some developer or whatever, while these other neighborhoods are languishing, and just like that become the source of the debate. So.
Okay, so the fact that the Wagner political dynasty took an extraordinary hit, does that have any impact on the county controller, Chelsea Wagner?
I don't know that it does. I mean, she's of course in an interesting position because, she and Rich Fitzgerald have been at odds almost since the day they were sworn in. In fact, even before that, really. So it'll be sort of interesting to see how that plays itself out. I don't personally think, that anybody went out and said, I'm going to vote for her because she's a Wagner, by God. And so I don't think she's likely to lose votes as a result of that now. I mean, I think her destiny will be decided by other factors.
Does the Democratic Party operative, do they undergo any? Do these guys who are clearly seeing their power fall away from them, do they engage in any soul searching? Do they comprehend? Are they able to change, or are we just going to see an entirely new political?
I don't know. I mean, I think
regime.
Again, these things wax and wane. There's a tendency, I think, especially for kind of the younger folk. This is kind of the corollary of what I was saying before. Mayors who have arisen, have been elected, who weren't necessarily part of that, who challenged the machine. And yet, isn't it odd that up until 24 hours ago, we still felt like the machine was a presence? I mean, it suggests that there's a sort of give and take here, that you knock these folks down, but in some other way they kind of come back up. And the reason machines exist is because they do speak for a constituency. We may not particularly agree with that constituency's priorities, but they're out there, and the city belongs to them as much as it does to anybody else with a vote. So, I don't know. Like I said before, the fact that there were people in Wagner's camp who are saying this city has changed and we haven't quite figured out how to handle that suggests that there's going to be at least some thinking on that score. How does it handle in terms? How do we handle it in terms going forward of do we endorse different people next time? Do we I don't know how that.
Do we
plays
eat
out.
somebody else's breakfast? Do we?
Yeah, I just.
Well,
it'll be very interesting to see how. Bill Peduto is about to be in a position of basically sitting across from the table from the FOP when it comes time to negotiating a contract and things like that. And it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Somebody was saying the other night that the real power in the mayor's office is the guy that sits in between the mayor and everybody else.
The chief of staff.
The chief of staff. And that in times past, Joe Mystic, Sal Cirabella have been very powerful characters.
Yes.
Who is that person going to be for Bill Peduto?
That is a really good question.
I don't know the answer.
I mean, because, of course, the guy who's sort of his right hand now is going to be a counselor.
So Dan Gilman can't do it. So who do you think?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I mean, that becomes the most important guy for anybody else.
And a signal.
Because it's access.
And a signal. I think a signal, too, to who is this mayor going to be? You know what I mean? Like, who he picks.
It'd sure be nice if it's a woman.
Yeah.
William!
Yeah. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world by a damn sight. Yeah.
A woman!
Yeah. And you know what? He's put that on himself to some extent, because he said, diversity, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, come on.
I think that
he damn well better come through on that.
And this to me will also be interesting.
We need more blacks and we need more women. And if this city's going to pretend to be progressive or getting progressive, then that's definitely part of the way that you do it. You don't present this blinding sea of white people with penises.
In fact, it's just better to leave the penises out, no matter what the race of.
I mean, really.
Put some pants on your chief of staff. That's all we're asking for here on the Lynn Cullen Show.
I'm so sick of it. This is the one thing that's so unbelievably old-fashioned and ludicrous about this town.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, of course, the single most visible person in his campaign was his
woman.
press secretary, Sonia Toller. So
maybe.
I don't imagine she'd be. I don't imagine she'd be a chief of staff. I could very easily see her being the press secretary.
Yeah,
which would be nice because she's returned my calls more often than the current person has in 7 years of being.
Okay, so speaking of the current person, she's left.
Yeah.
You've got people we have a mayor who's going to fill out his term unless the feds yank him out for 7 more months about, and his staff is jumping ship left and right. I mean, you're going to have, I see us limping in, assuming limping into the fall with essentially no one at the helm.
Yeah.
Don't you see it? I mean,
I mean, he's, in fairness, I don't know how different that really is. I mean, he's in a lame duck.
Because he hasn't been there anyway.
And he's a lame duck, and that happens to the best of them. I mean, the fact is, you are going to see in any administration at this point, you basically have a few months of job security, and then you're out on your keister most likely if you're at the higher echelons there. So naturally, you're going to be looking for something to do in February. So. That's typical. What's not typical, of course, is the fact that it feels like he's already.
This is good news.
Joseph.
Right. Joseph is our public employee who emailed us and said he didn't know anybody in the city government who was voting for Peduto, that all the public employees hated him. One of the reasons they hated him is Guy Costa was his. And Joseph writes, I took your advice about not voting for Wagner. Thank you. I weighed strengths and weaknesses and decided to vote Peduto. Thanks for your encouragement. You really know your shit. No, I really don't, but I knew enough. Good for you for doing that. And Darren wants me to ask you... what is this? I don't even understand it. Matt
Merriman Preston. The guy has not lost an election, has only picked non-old guard candidates. Yeah. So
who is this? I don't know.
Matt Merriman Preston is kind of Bill Peduto's political field general, I guess you'd kind of call him. He's kind of the guy who... He doesn't get written about a lot, but he's very sophisticated in terms of how he runs these campaigns.
So what other campaigns has he run?
Geez, he did work on Rudy Act's original, Aaron Mulchaney, Ed Gainey, a lot
So
of
he's a local guy who knows how to get progressives.
He is Matt and Peduto go back at least to 2005 when Peduto had that first sort of, we know we're not going to win, but we're going to have a good time doing this kind of, and sort of experiment, and sort of getting used to how it runs. And, it's pretty obvious that Matt's been on a learning curve, and he's gotten better and better as time has gone on. So yeah, I mean, he's the real deal. He looked real good. He looked real good in 2009. He looked real good. I said online today, if you looked at the 2009 council races and 2012 state rep races,
all his guys win.
Those were the beta tests for what we saw this time.
Interesting.
So he's
and I didn't
he's
even
the real,
know his name.
Yeah.
Matt
Merriman Preston. Yep.
Young guy?
Yeah. Younger than me, anyway.
Well, that still qualifies as young in my
Thank you.
book.
Yep.
All right, we've got Ansel writing. I'm thinking that Luke Ravenstall's final 7 months will be much like it is for a senior in college who only needs 6 credits to graduate in the final term. He won't show up for class much. Weekend drinking will begin on Wednesday night, and he's already told his parents he doesn't have plans to show up for the graduation ceremony.
It is sad. I mean, I remember even when Ravenstall announced he wasn't running for re-election, and he was asked, "What are you going to do in the latter months of your term?" And he just said, "Hey, we may do some initiatives that we wouldn't have otherwise have felt comfortable doing." And he did nothing, of course.
The one who asked the question said, so we got
Natalia
Rudak, Aaron Mulchaney, Natalie, Bill Peduto, Dan Gilman. Yeah. So he's a young little wizard.
Yep.
And
Yes.
So what position has Guy Costa's been resurrected?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Okay. And Russ writes, Lynn, as I am happy for a progressive turn in city government, I'm concerned about Mr. Peduto being a puppet for Rich Fitzgerald. Is this a concern? No, we both sort of feel that neither of those men is capable of being a puppet.
That's for the other. But I do think this is something to think about and to watch
that they
for.
might,
I agree.
or there might be a clash of these two at some point, as Fitzgerald maybe thinks that Peduto owes him. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
But there's no way that Rich Fitzgerald's going to be able to say, hey, Bill, do this. I can't see that in a million years.
We'll see.
He doesn't know. Okay, we got to go, and this one's got a long walk ahead of him. I gave you a hat. And if you want to even hear more, he'll be on Essential Pittsburgh, which is 90.5 on your FM dial.
It is. Be on with Joe Mystic, I believe, so that'll be fun.
That'll be fun.
Yeah,
so
he knows
he knows politics in Pittsburgh. And 90.5 at noon, right? Okay, and then you can crash.
No. I got a thing to do after that, and then a thing after that. So
another interview?
Yep.
And where's that?
Also on the South Side. So my life is rich and full, Lynn.
He's the go-to guy. We got him first. Thank you so very much. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Sokolowski's in Hong Kong.
What?
Yeah, and as usual, you've got stuff from detritus from the. Yeah. You got to get that all off.
This never happens to me at 90.5. I can tell you that.
They've got headphones. Yeah. There's just some behind your ear. You look in a mirror so you don't look like.
I have the mange.
Yes, exactly right. Okay. See ya.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.